You're watching The Citizen Report, real, in-depth American.
Welcome to The Citizen Report. I'm Jonathan Shannon, and thank you for joining me tonight. As always, this newscast is real, in-depth American. It's always good to be back here with you. Thank you so much for joining me. This is the number 2 broadcast of the day. I did a broadcast earlier today, shortly before 2 p.m. Eastern, detailing a report that Iran was launching missiles into the country of Qatar. Most of those missiles were intercepted, and as I understand, one missile was allowed through because it was not targeting anything specific. Now we have reports officially confirmed that, at least legally so, whether in practice remains to be seen. It has not, as my understanding has it, it is not currently in full effect as of right now. But President Trump on Truth Social announced that there is a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Iran. Now there's some conflicts in terms of reporting on this, and I'll get into that as well a little bit later in the broadcast. And as with earlier today, I anticipate this being a little bit shorter broadcast than the usual fulsome 30-45 minute broadcast. However, we'll just see how as we go. I'm just basically literally scheduled here at 9:45 to go live, and literally right on the minute was the earliest I could have reasonably have gone live. So that's how quickly this all kind of came together. So let me go first to that actual post by Trump on Truth Social. Obviously, that is sort of the most major news event of the night, and this is what what Trump said on Truth Social. Congratulations to everyone. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire in approximately 6 hours from now, when Israel and Iran have wound down and completed their in-progress final missions. We'll get into that a little bit later in the broadcast, by the way. Continuing here, for 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended. Officially, Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire, and upon the 24th hour, an official end to the 12-day war will be saluted by the world. During each ceasefire, the other side will remain peaceful and respectful. On the assumption that everything works as it should, which it will, I would like to congratulate both countries, Israel and Iran, on having the stamina, courage, and intelligence to end what should be called the 12-day war. This is a war that could have gone on for years and destroyed the entire Middle East, but it didn't and never will. God bless Israel, God bless Iran, God bless the Middle East, God bless the United States of America, and God bless the world. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. So that was the rather lengthy post by Trump on Truth Social earlier tonight, and I'm checking the timestamp of that, 6:02 p.m. So we're coming up on 4 hours, almost 4 hours now, since that post was made, and I'm assuming that's Eastern time. So let me just break this down, because there's a lot going on here. So in approximately 6 hours from now, basically Israel and Iran will basically cease what they're currently doing. I'm assuming they're still exchanging some fire. Al Jazeera, I'll get to that, apparently is reporting on some of that. 12 hours, or for 12 hours, so I guess in 6 hours from now, so we'll say about midnight Eastern time tonight, so a little more than 2 hours from now, we will see the ceasefire come into effect, basically. And then 12 hours after that, the way I'm reading this, the war will be deemed as having ended in Trump's view. And then he is calling this the 12-day war, interestingly enough. And I find, from a biblical perspective of this, slightly interesting, because number 12 has to do with government and I believe order as well, but certainly government. And so, God works through you can kind of go off the deep end if you're not careful, but I do believe at times Trump certainly, or should say God works through numbers because his ways are perfect. Like 7 is the number of perfection, 6 is the number of man, 4 is the number of new creation. And so 12 is the number of government. So I just find God's handiwork in this quite interesting here. Now, all that aside, that's just me reading into it. Getting back to the facts in hand, what I want to get to is something that came out earlier today that kind of adds some context and sort of a little bit of a pretext, if you'd like, for where we're at right now in this conflict between Israel and Iran. Now, this is courtesy of the Washington Post. Let me come back up on screen while I switch over to this. And basically, and this is just an allegation, and I don't, obviously anytime there's a translation, I have to take on a measure of faith that what is being presented is actually what they're claiming it is. And what I want to share is what is reportedly, I don't know if it's a single phone call or a series of phone calls between those in Israel. At least one unconfirmed report said that this was part of the Mossad intelligence agency in Israel. In the, I believe it's acronym-wise IRGC, if I'm not mistaken, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, basically. If I understand this correctly. So, as with a breaking news report, you're subject to get facts wrong as you go forth. So, just a disclaimer there. But I want to put this up on screen, and really what I want you to, it's not even listening. You're going to have to really look at the subtitles, and I'll just kind of summarize as we go forth. But I'm going to play this, probably not the whole thing, but this kind of adds a little bit of color to where we're at right now between Israel and Iran. Reportedly, this was released earlier today. I don't know when these phone calls took place, but let's take a look at this.
الو سردار سردار سلام علیکم سردار سلام علیکم.
So I guess
داری
the tone voices, the tone noise you're hearing is the redaction basically of the name.
و شمخانی رو فرستاد جهنم. الان برای تو بهت پیشنهاد میکنم.
So it's a little bit slow of a build up here, but just hang with us for a minute.
اومد رو خط بیارش رو خط. الان صدامو داری؟ گوش کن. من از کشوری زنگ میزنم به توضیح میدم. خوب گوش کن. من از کشوری زنگ میزنم که 2 ساعت پیش باقری سلامی شمخانی رو دونه دونه فرستاد جهنم. الان تنها پیشنهادی هم که به تو میکنم، هم میتونم بهت پیشنهاد کنم 12 ساعت وقت داری که I
think you got enough of exposure to this, but basically what this is, essentially, is a phone call that is allegedly made between someone in Israel, higher up in Israel, military-wise, I assume, and a senior Iranian official, basically giving them 12 hours to surrender, or I guess, effectively so, but escape with your wife and child. You have 12 hours to do it, is what he's saying. And let's just play this forward just a little bit further here. And I'll just read this part. Otherwise, you're on our list right now. You, whoever's name this is redacted, all of you, one by one, are on the list that I'm looking at, and you're our next target. So, it's, as with warfare, there's always a level of deception, and whether or not this was bluffing or in all seriousness, basically, and I'm assuming this was Israel recording this because there's no way I imagine Iran releasing this, but basically what we're looking at here is we've gotten to a point where the people high up in Israel, they're actually saying you have this time frame to surrender, escape, whatever, with your family, or you're basically done for. And so that's an interesting sort of context to what we are now seeing happening evening time here. It's early morning in the Middle East. but it's evening here in America. And we're having a ceasefire allegedly coming into effect at midnight Eastern time, if I'm understanding the post correctly. And the thing is, I have not seen if there's actually, I don't know if it'd be like some written agreement. Ceasefire is more like it has kind of like the effect of a gentleman's agreement, where you just agree to certain terms verbally, right? But I don't know of a written agreement. And I guess if there would be one, that would come in a later time in a different form. Now, just briefly in passing, I want to put this up, just food for thought for your consideration only. I don't know if this is confirmed or not. But allegedly, so this is I don't quite understand exactly the context here, and I'll just give that disclaimer here at the outset, and this is just in passing here, but this is what I'm seeing on X, and I, by the way, strongly recommend you go on there, sign up for an account if you haven't already done so, and follow me there as well. This is what it says. U.S. military base in Baghdad next to a major air heliport. This was historically used in 2000s and early to mid-2010s to counter ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and would be pretty strategic for the U.S. to launch attacks into Iran or Iranian proxies like Hezbollah, mostly for strategics. Now, what I find kind of peculiar about this is why they're saying this now, and this was earlier today. So is something happening in Baghdad? And I don't really know if anything actually is happening in Baghdad. There is one unconfirmed report, or depending on how you look at it, may be confirmed. It would be by Al Jazeera, where Iraq is seeing some activity tonight. So Iraq is kind of like a secondary target in all of this, because there's like these mercenaries and all this stuff, and of course, perhaps an attempt to further destabilize the region as well. Now, let me just come back up on screen as I keep moving this forward, but this is a screenshot of a post that someone made here, and I'm just going to say a lot of the information I'm sharing tonight is kind of adding context, but is either unconfirmed or uncorroborated, or I don't particularly know the source claiming this, but I want to share this with you anyway for you to consider. Again, as I said earlier about something else, food for thought. So critical thinking, very important as always, and this included. But this is the post on X I really want to get to, because this is just a theory about what could be going on behind the scenes. Because I just want to say this as well, that there's always more to this story, some of which you may never officially know, or that, I should say, the public may not really ever be told this in any near term. It may never be officially confirmed, but I want to provide this because I'll tell you this would make a lot of sense if this has some merit. So food for thought here. This is what, let me see the name here. I don't know this person, Goldie Gamari JD on X. This is what she's saying. Prediction. Based on the following information, number 1, Trump's tweet, "Congratulations, world, it's time for peace." 2, Mossad called top IRGC commanders and said they have 12 hours to defect, otherwise they're dead. And 3, Reva Pahlavi, she calls him King Reva Pahlavi, said the regime has collapsed and, quote, "This is a new dawn for Iran's lion and sun," unquote. 4, the IDF Farsi tweeted, "Long live freedom in Farsi." My prediction, just a guess, Khamenei is dead, and the terrorist Islamic regime has indeed collapsed. So there's a lot I could say about this, particularly on the Khamenei part. Khamenei is the supreme leader of Iran. If you don't know that, that's who he is. He's basically functions kind of as the head of state, if you'd like. He's certainly the individual you see out on TV quite a bit lately. And there's been some speculation that, unconfirmed, that actually as part of a military ops, that he was actually already taken out, but they're not going to say that because it would cause such an uproar that could not be tolerated. So basically, for now at least, either he is alive and something is happening with him. Perhaps he's being allowed an opportunity to escape to, a more friendly country. A couple come to my mind would be Russia, China, things like that. Or he could be dead, and we don't know that. So all of that is pure theory there, and I want to stress that again. It's just a theory. Now, this is the I believe it's called Khan Channel 11 in Israel. They're basically the state broadcaster. As I understand it, Khan actually means in Hebrew for here. As I understand it, here 11, I guess, if you want to call it that. But basically, the Channel 11 news organization in Israel, the state agency or the state media broadcaster in Israel, the public broadcaster in Israel. I'll have to hit the button to translate this because I had it up earlier. So this is what they're saying. Trump ceasefire between Israel and Iran will begin in 6 hours. So that's quite interesting there. So they're saying future tense will begin in 6 hours. So, and in a secondary headline from some few minutes ago, it says Iranian official to Al Jazeera, chances of a ceasefire within a few hours. So that's some of what the state broadcaster in Israel is saying about this. And then here's another one, mediated, and I'm looking at the middle of the screen for this one, mediated by the U.S. and Qatar. This is how the ceasefire between Israel and Iran was achieved. And then another one, before the ceasefire came into effect, the Air Force attacked throughout Tehran. So basically there's an admission here. It looks like before it actually takes effect that the Air Force attacked throughout Tehran. I'm assuming, let me just read this right here. It says, IDF spokesman issues evacuation notice for District 6 and 7 in Iranian capital. 4 drones launched from Iran were intercepted before crossing into Israeli territory. Syria condemns Iranian attack on U.S. base in Qatar. And I'm just going to jump in and say about that, what I think is so fascinating about all this is how many Arab countries Iran has really made angry, quite angry. And obviously, Iran is, at least in terms of optics, whether or not in reality, they don't have many allies right now. Now, it would seem that China is still an ally. I haven't heard anything to the contrary as yet. Russia seems to be kind of backing away, though, from Iran. They're not disavowing Iran at last check, but they're basically just kind of backing away from the scene a little bit, if you'd like. So, that's some of what I'm coming across tonight. Now, let me go ahead and also bring up a couple more things, and I do have more information to pass along to you. And this is going to be more of building out context, building out more of a broader picture. And this kind of leads me into some of the things that I was talking about on previous broadcasts about how you have what you could call the deep state in Iran. And this is what I've been saying before. This all didn't start in recent days, weeks, and months. This started years ago in its present form, if you'd like. Biblically speaking, I got tongue-tied there somehow, you've had this dispute going on for literally thousands of years to the present. So this is all hardly new at this point. And with respect to the situation in Iran, you can thank none other than Barry Soetoro, better known as Barack Hussein Obama. I'll stress the middle name Hussein, who was quite the ally, dare I say, to Iran. And if you don't believe me, there's a picture that kind of says it all. And I'm going to try to find it, but as I do, I'm going to just basically say that you can thank Obama for a lot of this destabilization that we've seen in the Middle East in present form. And basically what is happening is you're witnessing the destruction of the old guard. And by that, you're seeing the deep state assets removed. Now, I am not here to say that it's all Iran. In fact, we've read, I've seen it, and many of y'all have seen it. There's a phrase out there that, shall we say, the other country that starts with the letter I is being saved for last, whatever that means. Now, with that said, what happened in Iran with the U.S. attacking the nuclear sites, presumed alleged nuclear sites, was, as I understand it, called Operation Midnight Hammer. And there is a post, and I'm going to lose some of y'all as I say this, because I just know already some people are not going to, follow this, but that's okay. But I'm going to do this anyway, because I have a duty here on the Citizen Report to report as I see fit, and I have full editorial control, I might add, for this show, and I just want to make sure I have turned over every rock and every leaf, if you'd like. Now, this is a post from, looks like April 6, 2018. And it was, I guess, including a prior post that said, pics will surface of Hussein holding AK-47 in tribal attire, one of many, net shutdown, number 17. Fake pic push by MSM, that's mainstream media. Videos and backup. Google, kill. YouTube, kill. Facebook, kill. Twitter, kill. Yahoo, kill. Bing, kill. Instagram, kill. Net will be paused. Hammer, on the clock. And then I'll say number 17. Now, remember that what was called, what this whole thing with the U.S. getting involved, that was called Operation Midnight Hammer, as I understand it. So, interesting there for sure. And I want to go to something that, and I'm going to say this before I even put this up, that it is not ever my intention to cause fear or undue concern, but we need to consider that whenever there's a news event, it's not all what it seems. And there's always more to the story than what meets the eye. Some people just don't believe that, but it is true. Now, many of y'all will remember in January 2018, there was what was reputed in the mainstream media, or I should say, what was claimed in the mainstream media, maybe that's a better word for it, was if you'd like, a false alarm missile inbound to Hawaii. And this was the push notification many people saw. And I'll just read it for the record. It says, emergency alert. A ballistic missile threat inbound to Hawaii. Seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. Now, the story there was that, this person, there was a password, it was on a posted sticky note, and, this person clicked the wrong button, and boom, this whole test became a fake, basically a false trigger of the ballistic missile alert, which the whole thing about that never made any sense to me. Because, first of all, how do you get something how do you do that so easily? Because there's at least on the more sophisticated systems, there are fail-safes, and I get that we're talking about the emergency alert system, but these things are officially sanctioned. They're not just done by a person. Now, locally, on the more, we'll call it the older systems, particularly the emergency broadcast system, there was a time and place where if there was an activation of the emergency broadcast system, you can actually go find some of these tapes on YouTube. Some people have gone through the trouble of uploading them, but they would actually insert a tape and they would start playing out a test of the emergency broadcast system. It would literally be a play out of a tape. Likewise, if there was an actual activation, you would have the tape playing out for that message. Now, fast forward to modern times today, these are all mostly digitized anyway, but the reason I'm bringing all this up is that I don't think that I think there's always more to the story than what meets the eye, as I've said. But before I get to that, this is what was said, basically, about this. And essentially what happened was they sent out a second alarm, or second alert, which was intended at this point. It said, there is no missile threat or danger to the state of Hawaii. Repeat, false alarm. Now, basically, so there was that follow-up message that was later sent out to negate the first one. Now, the thing that is very interesting about this, and again, I'm not saying this to scare anyone. Please don't take this the wrong way. And I'm just making sure I got this up correctly before I put this up. But this is what it said. This was that same year, later on in July. It said, where did the missile go? Blown up in sky. And if this poses to be believed, anyway, F-16's intercept. Now, I remember from the book Nuclear War, A Scenario by Annie Jacobson, which I highly recommend you go read. Not for the faint of heart, just a disclaimer there. There is a missile defense system of sorts for the United States, and basically they intercept a missile, and what they basically say about it, it's like shooting a bullet with a bullet, which is, basically the chances of success are actually quite small. Not zero, but small. So I say all of this to kind of to build up to the point of saying, I don't know, I can't tell you for sure that this was a real missile threat back then. But if it was, basically, the thought was, that this was, most likely, basically that the narrative was that if there ever was a missile being flown towards Hawaii, it would most likely be a rogue out of the blue launch by North Korea. North Korea is, like most countries on the planet, they have a deep state, and the same is true in Iran. And basically what the deep state wanted to do in Iran, and this is why you had Hillary sell uranium to Russia, you had Obama giving literally cash, and I mean literally cash, in his final days in office to the Iranian regime. They wanted to, it's sick. It's sick logic. They wanted to start a nuclear war. Because how can you explain better a global collapse of the financial system? How can you better, enslave people through the doing aways of the various constitutions and things like that across the world? Most notably, obviously, our Constitution in the United States. If we got rid of that, basically they say, oh, this is a war, we got to suspend all these things, and then, of course, they never come back. Just look at what they did with this whole C-19 thing. People had to basically claw their rights back after it got so quickly sabotaged. So that leads me to say that with respect to Iran, I do believe that there was a credible threat in Iran. And I think that a lot of what we're seeing are optics. I think the whole thing has already been played out behind the scenes, and that we're seeing the movie play out for the public for public consumption. Now, that is not to say that the threats aren't real. And basically, like that post said, was implying, if it's to be believed, there was a real missile going to Hawaii, and it got stopped. So, how the F-16s got up in air as quickly as they did, because it takes about 30 minutes for a missile to reach the continental United States from a place like North Korea. I believe it's 26 minutes and change. And I'm assuming less going to Hawaii, but I don't know. Now, the U.S. has a significant military base in Guam, obviously. That's part of the reason why we have Guam. And then you have, I believe in South Korea, a significant military base there as well. So Iran could have well been basically the deep state's attempt to start something, and Iran may have been neutralized, the regime I mean. So we'll have to see how this plays out. I still think this is very early in the whole sort of playing out of this situation, and we'll have to see how this unfolds as we go forward in time. Now let me go to this. This is Al Jazeera. This is why I was saying earlier that there's some, if you'd like, unconfirmed, like basically with respect to if this ceasefire will actually happen. Al Jazeera is perhaps, they're perhaps saying that this isn't quite a done deal. It says, live, Iran says it will halt attacks if Israel stops illegal aggression. Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, says there's no agreement on a ceasefire, but Tehran will halt attacks if Israel stops its illegal aggression by 4 a.m. local time or 0030 GMT time. So that is Al Jazeera reporting this, and this is like the state broadcaster in Qatar, which, by the way, of course, was the same country that had its country come under a direct yet indirect attack, because Iran was making clear this was really against a U.S. base, not against Qatar. And it still made Qatar quite angry, understandably so. And so this is Al Jazeera, what they're saying about that. So basically, they're claiming Iran is not quite on board with the ceasefire, despite Trump saying that there is a ceasefire forthcoming. And now we have 4 minutes ago, and like I said, I'm literally live on air. So 5 minutes ago, actually, this is the Al Jazeera in real time saying this. Israel says Iranian missile attack underway. Israel's military says it has detected the launch of missiles from Iran towards Israeli territory. It called on the public to take shelter if they receive an alert, and said its air defenses are working to intercept the threat. We will bring you more when we have it. Now, continuing down this real-time thing here that Al Jazeera has, it's basically a live blog, that's what it's called. So Qatar Airways is resuming its flights. It had been suspended, and that was 10 minutes ago. Now, back up at the top, because this did catch my eye, but I wasn't quite ready to talk about it. So about 1 minute ago, Al Jazeera is reporting this. Trump communicated directly with Netanyahu to secure ceasefire report. U.S. President Donald Trump communicated directly with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to secure the ceasefire, according to the Associated Press, citing an unnamed senior White House official. The report said that Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Special Middle East Envoy Steve Witkoff communicated with Iranians through direct and indirect channels. And then let me go down a little bit. It says the White House has maintained that the Saturday bombing by the U.S. on Iranian nuclear sites helped get Israel to agree to the ceasefire, and that the Qatari government helped to broker the deal. So, interestingly enough, it does look like from this report, Qatar actually served as a key role in getting us to this ceasefire point in time. Now, so that is enough to kind of give you an idea that basically, as I'm here talking live with you tonight, this is not quite a done deal. Although perhaps when the ceasefire does come into effect, perhaps we will actually see the ceasefire actually hold. That remains to be seen. Do I believe Iran will actually do a ceasefire? I give it about as much chance as I would a $3 bill being a real bill. Now, I'm just trying to see here real quick, if you will bear with me for a moment. And this is what I was looking for, so thankfully I didn't have to look long. 46 minutes ago, excuse me, this is from Al Jazeera. It says, Iraq's Imam Ali base under attack. The Al Sumeri TV network is reporting an attack on the radar systems at Imam Ali base, in Iraq. the Baghdad-based television channel did not say who carried out the attack. Imam Ali base is located in Iraq's Dai Qar Governorate, just southwest of the provincial capital of Nasiriyah. So that is from Al Jazeera some 45 or a little bit more than that minutes ago. So with that said, that is kind of the bulk of what I had for you tonight. And this is an alleged photo, and I'll end with this. It is not confirmed. Someone on another podcast, I believe, let me check the name of that podcast for you. Maybe you can go check it out in your spare time. Maybe some of y'all can let me know what you think of this podcast. The Beach Broadcast, like beach as in a literal, like going to the beach. So Beach Broadcast. It seems to be a really decent broadcast from the one I listened to before I came to air tonight. The Beach Broadcast said that this was not an AI photo, but a real photo. So with that said, let me put this up on screen for you. Obama bowing to, it sure looks like the Khamenei guy in Iran. Now, it could be somebody else, and this could be a completely fake photo. And someone can let me know if this is real or not. Whether if it's real or not, I will say this. The thing is about it, it does kind of play into the overall how Obama was. He did not stand up on his own 2 feet boldly as our president and actually stood up for America. He was all about selling us down the river. It's like some people said there was a 16-year plan to destroy America. Obama was here to weaken it, and then Hillary would get us into a war and get rid of our Constitution. So that is, a good visual reminder of what we had back then and the consequences we're now still faced with because of it. So with that said, folks, I always welcome your feedback. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to go ahead and sign off tonight. There's really not much more I need to say tonight, and I did have in mind that there would be hopefully more opportunity to sort of dig deeper on some of these things as needed. But yes, you can always go to thecitizenreport.net, and let me just put that up for you like I have been doing of late. I need to create a slate so you can actually visually see all of this without having me say it. But thecitizenreport.net, that is where you can go for all the major links for the Citizen Report. You can follow me on X at JFilmGuy. That's JFilmGuy. So you can follow me on X. I encourage you to do so. And of course, subscribe to me here on YouTube if you haven't already done so, as well as the Citizen Report on Rumble. And with that, folks, God bless each and every one of you. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight on this second broadcast in the same day. It's quite incredible times we're living in that I would need to do it twice in one day. But indeed, that's the kind of times we're in right now. So, and I just want to say here at the very end of the broadcast that I'm not here to say that, well, let me just say this. The Bible is very clear that blessed are the peacemakers. And so we should always be seeking peace, and if it requires it, neutralizing, an enemy. And there are biblical examples, as I've said before, there are biblical examples where people did not neutralize their enemy, and then it really came back to bite them later because they didn't do so. And so, America, we should not be involved in all these different wars overseas, but we got to remember that everything leading up to now is basically the consequence of prior actions and prior things the deep state put into place. And so I do think a lot of what we're watching is a movie. And I do know that at the very end of things, like the Lord of the Rings, the end of all things, there will be that tribulation period. And we know that any peace in the Middle East is just temporary, it's fleeting, it's futile, ultimately. But it is still something we should seek after. And so, personally, based on what we know tonight, based on all available information, personally, I think the way Trump handled this, and this is just my editorial here, I do think Trump handled this quite well because he did what he needed to do and yet did not get us further involved into war. He didn't put troops on the ground. Now, all that can change, but as of right now, Trump has not done. He does not appear to be putting our troops on the ground. Actually, I did forget to put this up because when Trump came out and spoke, whatever it is you think of him, this gives me chills. And what I mean is this. Trump, at the end of his speech, said this. Now, some people would say, well, he's not mentioning Jesus. Let me tell you something. Even mentioning God in the way that he did is a far cry from how Obama was. I recall Obama, they had it to where when he was going to speak somewhere, they literally covered up a cross or did something to make it where it wasn't visible. And to go from that to this says quite a bit. I want you to take a listen to this.
And I want to just thank everybody, and in particular, God. I want to just say we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them.
So that was Trump during that, I believe it was Saturday, announcement. And some have said, by the way, AMTV channel, by the way, said this, and I happen to agree with this. I don't personally think that this was like live to the public, but this wasn't actually live because there's no way during a major military operation they were going to announce, by means of being live somewhere, that you had the president, the vice president, and the SecDef, the Secretary of State, all in one place. That was not going to happen. So probably what happened was they taped this, and then they went their separate ways, so they're not all in one location. And then it, by this point, it went out live. So, the tape went out live. Now, it could have really been live, but my belief, as was, I think his name is Christopher Green on AMTV, he believes, as do I, that this was a taped speech made to look live that actually went out live. And that's why I say so much of this is a movie playing out like a script. Because you got to wake up the masses, because most people do not understand and they don't comprehend these things. They can't. They have to be led to a certain, that yes, the deep state's evil, and yes, the deep state really wanted to do this to the planet. To basically turn it into a desert for whatever sick reason they had. I mean, it's absolutely insane. So, yeah. With that, folks. Little addition there at the very end about the deep state and comparing, contrasting Trump to Obama and that stuff. So with that, folks, God bless each and every one of you. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. Once again, subscribe here on YouTube if you haven't already done so. Over on Rumble for the Citizen Report. Go to thecitizenreport.net. Go ahead and bookmark that if you have it on your browser so you can come back to it, and you have those links right there. And then follow me on X at JFilmGuy, and I'll spell that one more time. It's JFILMGUY. So follow me on X, and so with that, that's it for me tonight, folks, and I hope you have a very good evening, and I'll see you again soon here on the Citizen Report. Good night, everyone, and God bless.